Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to talk about how is it that we can all be interconnected and we feel like we are a part of other people. And in our belief system here, we are connected to everyone and everything. Sometimes that can be rather difficult for us to wrap our minds around, especially when we interact with people with very differing beliefs, people that we find irritating, people that just make our nerves cringe. You're like, how can I even tolerate to be around this person? And how can I be so connected and interconnected with all of these various people? And we were having a conversation a few days ago on how to better think about it. And this analogy I thought was apropos for this discussion, which is if we think about all the slices of our personality, and if we consider it just one big ball, there are aspects of each of our own personalities, yours, mine, my brother's, everyone's, that has different pieces that we love, different pieces that we like, different pieces that we would like to work on, and different pieces of ourselves that we would like to suppress and get rid of. And some that we just find repulsive and we just really don't know how to deal with them. We try to ignore them even when we continue to do the same things. So we can all look at humanity as the same thing. We are all the individual with all those slices. And then we look out at the broader picture of all of humanity. And it is really the same thing, or very similar, in that there are different people that think differently from us, and there are different things within our own personalities that conflict with each other. Whether you are a liberal, there are certain conservative things that you probably enjoy, and they're same thing if you're a conservative. There's some liberal ideas that don't seem too repulsive, and you may even embrace them. It's the same thing with the broader aspect of humanity. There are certain things that we may find repulsive within ourselves, and the same as the broader humanity. We are all connected. We are all one. There are certain aspects of humanity that we do not like. Just as in our personality, we try to repress or ignore, and oftentimes we do that in a broader perspective on humanity itself. And in reconciling those things and try to understand that we are all part of the same, then we need to recognize our faults. We need to recognize what we do love about ourselves and how to embrace who we are so we can better start to understand the broader concepts of humanity and how we may embrace and help and nurture the rest of humanity once we take care of our individual self. And I was just wondering, sir, what were your thoughts on any of this?
So when we're talking about the broader spectrum of humanity, there's always that yin and yang, the good versus the bad. And a lot of times people see their flaws in other people, and it makes them dislike people even more because they can see what their flaws are more prevalent in other people. So one thing that I think would be helpful to us, to anybody else out there, is when you do find some of those ideas repugnant or repulsive to you, maybe you should stop back and think, do I share some of those views? Either am I open with them or am I not open with them? And kind of look inside yourself first and see, is the flaw within me or is the flaw really in that other person? And first we should strive to just see everyone as another human being, another person, no matter what their beliefs are. Like this cancel culture that we currently live in, I think is one of the most detrimental things to society that we can have, because instead of listening to someone else's point, and you might get closer to an understanding, they just want to cancel them out and say, all right, well, I'm different than you. But when you think about it, you're not that much different. If you're sitting on the bus or the subway or just next to somebody in line, you are 99.9996% DNA exact to that person. You have a very, very small thing that's separating you DNA wise. And on a spiritual level or a level of consciousness, we're all going through the exact same thing. No matter if somebody was raised with a silver spoon in their mouth or of the poorest of society, we still have and do a lot of the same struggles. Now, does that mean that we're all equal going through this experience of life? I say we're equal, but we see things in different ways. No one person is better than another person, nor should you see yourself as better than someone else. You should say, or I would hope that you would say, something that we try to say is, see those differences in you, see their differences, their own thoughts and perspective, and you don't have to agree with them, but you can say, well, that was a very well made point. I don't agree with you, but I do like that you tried to sit down and have a genuine conversation about it instead of just saying, you're wrong, move on, agree to disagree. Agree to disagree is a terrible, terrible cop out. One of the ways that I can only see agree to disagree is through the lens of travel. For instance, we've been to India, and a lot of other people out there may have been to India. They could have had a terrible experience and hated it. They could have had bad food where they ate off the street and got violently ill, or they could have not known where to go and they just had a bad time. Whereas we went, we had a wonderful time, had great food and everything. That person could come back home and say, oh, India was so bad. I didn't like this, this, and this. And I could say, well, I had a really great time in India. And even us being in the same town or place as that person, we had a different experience. Now, I can agree to disagree with that person just because they had a bad experience, but that doesn't transfer through the whole lens of life.
I think you're exactly right. And if I could expand on exactly what we're talking about with reconciliation, and what you just said was, if you go into this whole council culture and this whole idea that, we don't listen to each other. And one of the first things that we may want to consider is that sometimes when someone says something, their delivery is, or the presentation of their idea is, it gets off on the exact wrong foot. And then even if it doesn't, even if they come across with a great opening line, a great starting point for discussion, the people that know they disagree with whatever was just said, they just shut down. They don't even listen to anything beyond that. Their walls go up, their defense mechanisms start to come out, and it's over. So it would be a good idea to practice in understanding ourselves and humanity, is that when someone does approach you or me or you or anyone, is that we come to an open mind, not knowing if they agree or disagree, but treat people just as the golden rule. You want to be treated, you want to treat people as you want to be treated back in return. And that's not so easy to do sometimes when somebody opens their mouth and is just diametrically opposed to what you believe or what you hold to be fundamental. Perfect example is our delving into the Old Testament. Well, that just rubs a lot of people the wrong way, as it is in discussions I've had with friends that or people that were once my friend go, oh, well, I just can't even believe you would read the Bible and say those things. And then my response is, well, have you read it? So, some things you can't go on into a conversation with someone. They just have this belief system. They don't know why. They haven't fully read or studied whatever subject you're talking about. So you really can't continue a conversation on that point. But you can politely say, well, whenever you do have more information that's reasonable and credible that we can have a discussion, I'd love to visit with you about it. Instead of just being, well, you're dumb, you've never read it, you just taken what this or that said from whatever subject. That's just not a healthy, mature way to go about having a discussion with anybody. And to realize that we are all in that boat. We all have those emotions. We all have defense mechanisms that go up. And we have to all realize that we are going through this life together. And even though we do disagree sometimes we don't even know why we disagree. And until we have conversations with each other, and we can do so in an open mind and a very caring and respectful way, I think that goes a long way to help our individual selves become better people, and it helps our local areas become better, and then ultimately that spreads out to everybody. So at the end of the day, it is work on yourself and see all the various faults that you don't like within yourself. See all the things that you do love about yourself, and then you can start to recognize that as humanity as a whole, and how you individually are very similar to the larger aggregate. And then that is where maybe we can start getting rid of this cancel culture and start to see each other as fellow human beings traveling on this road of life together and become better people in the process. And with that, that was my point, sir.
I would like to go into just a little bit farther on your point where you're talking about cancel culture and having a conversation. I think that is a great practice when you're having a conversation or discussion with somebody to actually listen to what they're saying. So many times during a conversation or discussion, when the other person is talking, only thing that's going on in your head is prepping your next argument, what you're about to say next, and how can you counteract that point, instead of actually listening to their point, soaking it up and saying, okay, let me have a little time to think about that. For instance, I'm glad you brought up religion in our trip through the Old Testament, because through our friends, family, and some of the comments online, we've got some pushback from some of those things. And at first I was thinking, all right, why don't you just read it? Like, everything is there. How can you come up with a different opinion? And what I've found is that there's a big difference between mythology, the doctrine, and actual religion. Now, people think of Christianity as their religion, but that's not what they're really thinking about, because when you break down what religion actually is, religion is the customs, the cultures, the sacrifices, the tribute for what you do for your religion to appease your god, goddesses, or gods. Now, the mythology is all the stories that lead up to that. And a lot of people miss this little point. Like, they think of another point is that when we think of religion and mythology, it's always in the past. All these stories are in the past, where it seems like there's a golden age that's been missing, that we've missed out on a golden age. Because in the Bible, or in some of the other sacred texts, the gods have a direct communication line with humans, and that's lost. So we always see religion as the good times, the mythology, that the humans were there, whether it be Greek, Roman, any of the Indian religions. So we're always viewing religion and mythology from the past, because once we see it in the future, we no longer believe those myths. And another thing is, we see myth and mythology and religion, you really need to try to take a look from the outside of it. What I mean is, Christianity, if you believe in Christianity, more especially the birth, rise, and reign of Jesus, you would see that the Immaculate Conception of Jesus, his life being the Messiah, which Messiah is another misunderstood definition. Messiah is really only someone that brings you closer to God. So we could be the Messiah for another religion, or anybody else. A preacher could be a Messiah. And the religion that Jesus Christ is bringing you closer to is the religion of the Old Testament, the thoughts, customs, and cultures of that society. Great example is Jesus did not eat pork. We'll just have that one simple example. I've had a lot of people, they say, oh yeah, I believe in God and Christ, the Old Testament. Well, Christianity is the entirety of the Bible, the New and Old Testament. And by my first definition, religion is the cultures and customs and practices to appease your gods. So Jesus did not eat pork because it was against his religion. If you follow Jesus, then you're in his religion. Well, people say, oh, well, it's okay for me to eat pork. Well, you're not following the religion. You can see the mythos, the mythology of Jesus's Immaculate Conception, his reign, his rule, and his death and resurrection. You see that as 100% fact. It's not a myth to you. If you're on the outside, another culture, if you were never to hear the word, it's like, oh, well, that's a good myth. That's a story. That's a parable. but as a Christian, you see that as fact. Now, you want to follow the mythology of the religion, the story of Abraham, Moses, Isaiah, all of them, that's mythology. Those are parables, and those are stories to either show you how to act or how not to act, and the consequences of the end are the religion. So what most modern day Christians want to believe and think is they want to have the mythology, the mythos of the religion, and only put faith in mythology, but not actually practice the religion of the Bible. The religion is that you go and do your blood sacrifices, your offerings, your tithing, you pay all these attentions to the priest, but nobody does that. So you want to follow the mythos. And I think that's one of the reasons that Christianity was so big and is still so big and great, is because a lot of people see Jesus Christ, his ultimate sacrifice, dying on a cross, is that their part of religion's over. It's a very laissez-faire religion. It's very hands-off, if you speak any French. So they say, all right, well, Jesus has already made my sacrifice. I don't have to do the blood sacrifices. I can eat pork. I can do all these things that are strictly prohibited in the book that makes up your mythology and religion. See, that's not how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to believe in the mythos, follow it, and make that and draw that conclusion into your religion. So you have to follow those ways and customs and cultures, and nobody's doing that. So with that being said about the Old Testament, I would just really like to leave you with that point and to actually think about those things.
Everybody, once again, thank you for joining us. As always, you're welcome to come out here every Sunday. We like to get started around noon. And in our next videos, we will be taking a farm walkabout. So the people who have stayed tuned thus far, come out and join us. And I know that you're going to have a good time. And also like and subscribe. Not only this, but if you have an interest in delving into the Old Testament, we go in great detail about each book. So please go back and see some of our previous videos. And thank you for joining us.
Have a good day.